I'm the president of the Brooklyn Navy Yard Development Corporation. Very excited about this day, turnout. It's a very, very unique development opportunity. We believe very important part of the yard. Will fit very nicely with the tremendous growth going on inside the Navy Yard and in the surrounding communities. So with no further ado, though, I'm going to turn you over to your tour guide for the day and presenter and point person on this project, who, if you're serious about submitting a proposal, have any questions, Shani Leibowitz is your person, our Vice President for Development. So, Shani.
Hi, everyone. I just want to make sure everybody signed in and had and got the materials from the front desk. So if you didn't, just on your way out, make sure you pick up a sign-off sheet that will allow you one-day access onto the Admiral property for the site visit. I'm just going to breeze through, hopefully, a little presentation. For those of you who are not familiar with the Navy Yard is 300 acres and obviously sitting between the Manhattan and Williamsburg bridges. And so we abut up against the Fort Greene, Williamsburg, Dumbo, Vinegar Hill, Clinton Hill, Bedford-Stuyvesant. So we have a lot of different communities are served by the Brooklyn Navy Yard. A little bit of history about the yard. It's been a Navy Yard. The site became a Navy Yard in 1801. It was decommissioned by the Navy in 1966. And the Brooklyn Navy Yard Development Corporation began managing the yard on behalf of the city in 1981. The yard is city-owned land, and the Brooklyn Navy Yard Development Corporation manages it through a long-term lease on behalf of the city. And this just gives you a little bit of, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, a little bit of background about who BNYDC is. We have 4 million square feet of industrial space under roof today. We are in the midst of the largest growth campaign in the yard since World War II, when 70,000 people worked here. Today we have 5,000 people. And we are essentially 100% full, and we have been for 5 years. So we're very anxious to put up new space in the yard. And the Admiral's Row site is slightly different from what our normal tenant base is, because we are an industrial park, but this is one opportunity that we want to provide retail opportunities for the surrounding neighborhoods and other neighborhood retail between a grocery supermarket and the associated neighborhood retail. And also, if we can get additional industrial space on the site, we'd love that too, of course, to feed our mission. These are the strengths of the Navy Yard. Zoning certainty, it's a little less relevant for this site, as I said, because we're assuming that there's going to be supermarket and retail on this site. So this just gives you an idea of like the workforce and the other benefits of being located in and around the Navy Yard. This gives you a brief overview of the types of uses that are in the yard today. And obviously the Admiral's Row site is located on the corner of Navy and Flushing. Okay, and there's a view of the site. You'll see today there are 11 structures that are along Flushing Avenue. And as part of the Section 106 process that the federal government has been undertaking for the past year, it has been determined that 2 structures are going to remain on the site, and you can see them right here. So it's the timber shed, which is about 6,000 square feet, and Building B, which is basically a 3-story residential structure with a basement. The rest of the buildings will be demolished, and the supermarket and other development will happen on that site. As we stand today, there are no known subsurface environmental conditions on the site. Obviously, there's some asbestos in the buildings and lead paint, we can assume. Other than that, there's no known significant issues there.
Just to emphasize again, this 6 acres is still owned by the federal government and was not transferred as a part of the purchase by the city in 1966.
Right. So here are some of the site amenities. We're very close to downtown Brooklyn and Manhattan. Obviously, again, the neighborhoods, there's a good market base here already. There are 13,000 people living in Ingersoll, Walt Whitman, and Farragut houses. One of our main goals is to put the supermarket here because they have no access to fresh produce and affordable groceries, and it's a severe health issue, and we have committed to the community to provide them a supermarket on this site. And that is one of the main drivers of developing Admiral's Row. Just an example, I mean, the development while we have industrial space inside the yard, there have been a lot of zoning changes on the perimeter of the yard. So a lot of the industrial has turned to residential, and there's been other retail development happening. So there are some new market opportunities just outside the yard. So there's some limiting factors with the public transportation in terms of subways. However, there are buses that come right along the perimeter of the yard, and there is probably maybe a 10-15 minute walk from the York Street stop at the F train. That's probably the closest subway to that site, or the AC at High Street. There's going to be the Brooklyn Waterfront Greenway, which will go directly around the Navy Yard and right past this site. Again, as you know, in the RFP, the development parameters, the major two things on the site must be a supermarket of no less than 40,000 square feet. It can be larger. And obviously the zoning is M12, so it requires a ULURP for retail larger than 10,000 square feet. We are also hoping, we want 20,000 square feet or more of community-oriented retail, whether it's a bank or anything else that might support the community. And again, we do not list it here, it's not a requirement, but if as part of the development additional industrial space can be built, we would like to see that as well.
And just to emphasize, when you look at the success of the Navy Yard, 5 years, basically 100% full, much of that are small spaces on upper floors of multi-story industrial buildings. So we are extremely confident and have a long track record of proving that you can lease up space like that relatively easily here. We've had over 200 requests for space in the last 12 months of the Navy Yard alone.
Right. We're saying 1,500 square feet for Brooklyn Navy Yard Development Corporation Employment Center. We have an employment center that currently operates out of this building. We'd like to put it on the perimeter of the yard so it's more accessible to the communities that it serves. It places people both in jobs inside the Navy Yard and outside the Navy Yard, and it's been very successful. So we'd like to put at least 1,500 square feet devoted to this employment center. Obviously, the parking needs to be accommodated on-site for the retail uses. If there is industrial built on the site, that can be accommodated within the Navy Yard. But you'll see on the next slide, or I think it might be the next slide, that there are other industrial uses right behind the site on the interior of the Navy Yard, and so there's no additional space for parking to serve the retail inside the Navy Yard. It must be on this site. Every new building and major renovation in the Navy Yard today we are requiring at least LEED Silver or above. So any development on the site is going to need to meet those standards.
Just to highlight again, as you drive over to the site, you'll see some of the sustainability infrastructure investments that have taken place in the yard, what we think are the nation's first wind solar street lamps that save a tremendous amount on installation because you don't have to run conduit from pole to pole. You'll see over near the site the Perry building, which has the city's first building-mounted wind turbines and is on track to get LEED Gold. It's a key element of what we are doing as we grow the Navy Yard, not only to be a good neighbor to the surrounding communities and minimize our footprint, but to be the destination of choice for green manufacturing, a cluster of businesses that is growing substantially in the Navy Yard. And you can find out more on our website about that. So we put a very high premium on innovative sustainability investments and are eager to see those sorts of things in proposals.
Right, and that sort of feeds into the next one, which is the Brooklyn Waterfront Greenway. We have been working with the Greenway, and along the entire perimeter of the Navy Yard, including on this site, we have committed to them to give them a setback and move our fence line in. So on this site, it's between 5 and 7 feet along Flushing and Navy. The National Guard Bureau has just completed a study of the mature trees on the site, and they have indicated 4 trees that should remain on the site and should be incorporated into the development, and you'll see where they are on the next slide. It is critical for the Navy Yard that we have a secure perimeter fence, and so the development will need to, obviously the retail uses will be open to the public, but the perimeter of the fence that goes behind the site needs to be maintained. We have 24-hour security in the site, and we need that to remain.
Yeah, in the RFP and in here you say possibly industrial development, but there's no square footages.
Again, we don't want to make that a prerequisite of the proposal. We would like proposals to have them.
How much?
Up to as much that can fit on the site, according, that meets the FAR requirements. The FAR requirement in the M12 is 2. And so whatever we can get on the site. No exact requirements though. We encourage to see some. And here's the other requirements. As part of the Section 106 process, we have to do a site commemoration plan. We would like to work with the selected developer to come up with what exactly that is. It has not been determined at this point. There's some flexibility there. We would work with the chosen developer. We'd like to see, we need a plan for implementing MWBE participation, and we encourage local hiring.
And just to highlight again, very high priority for us. Again, if you look at the building that was recently completed out near the site, on that building, 40% of the dollar value went to MWBEs. That's very high. Obviously, that will be something that we'll work through with a selected project developer. But it's something we feel very strongly about. The local hiring piece, absolutely critical, both in terms of the construction and commitment towards local hiring for the supermarket. If you look at what Fairway's done and IKEA, those are some of the many models that we would look towards in terms of commitments for local hiring.
All right, just briefly, just to give you some orientations when you go out on the site, these are things that you can keep in mind. Again, here's the two buildings that the federal government is requiring to be rehabilitated. The utility connections, we're assuming, are going to come off the grid, not from inside the Navy Yard. These are the locations of the trees there are 4 trees that the federal government has pointed out that need to be saved. They're historic trees, and so you'll see they're over here in these sites. This is just again indicating the setback for the greenway. The RFP mentions that for the loading on the supermarket, obviously if you could load off of Flushing or Navy. However, clearly the maneuvering of the trucks might require too much of the area and not leave you enough parking. So we will allow the development to be serviced, those uses be serviced from inside the yard. You'll see in the next slide where our gate is, and the trucks could come in and load from behind. The things you have to keep in mind though is that there's a loading dock. This is obviously, there's a fence line here, and this is all inside the Navy Yard. We have to keep access to this loading dock here. You'll see it when you go out there. This is building 121, also known as the Paymaster building. They have a 15-foot easement off their building over on this side. And so these are just elements you have to keep in mind in terms of loading.
Excuse me,
Yes.
is that a real street? Is Park Avenue a designated
It
street?
is no.
Okay.
The streets on there can be, those are just Navy streets, and they do not have to be maintained.
Okay.
Yes. So again, here's another image showing this is the interior of Admiral's Row. Right here's the Sand Street Gate. We're currently in the process of reconstructing this gate, and the actual security is going to be moved to this location here. So if you want to load from inside the yard, everything has to be vetted through security. So the entry then into the site could either be from here. You'll see on the map there's 3rd Street which ends here. We have no plans to continue the street, so it could be used as part of the development. It doesn't have to be. It just sort of right now dead ends, and there's no plans for that at this point. We're now reconstructing this road here, so we had to put the curb cuts in, so we're putting a depressed curb over here, so this could be a location. Here's the 15-foot easement I was referring to. And then back here, 275 is essentially over here. I'm sorry, it's off this map. And so loading could occur in here as well. And then here's just the submissions. Obviously, are due on October 19th. If you have any questions going forward, I will put together an email list of all from the sign-in sheet. If you have questions, please submit them in writing so that way I can respond to everybody in the group so everybody has the same responses. And it's also October 19th, that's a 3-month, basically you have a 3-month period to submit a proposal. We assume it will probably take us up to 3 months to evaluate the proposals and have discussions with potential teams. Following that, the federal government will, assuming we have great proposals, we'd love to move forward with one of them, and we would indicate to the city or to the federal government that we want to purchase the site, and then that would happen, we assume, by mid-2010. And of course, all these are contingent upon the federal government's completion of their Section 106 process, which they're just about to the end of it now. They have begun a federal environmental assessment, and so we're hoping that's moving along. So again, these timeframes and some of the time frame for the project is contingent upon the federal government's ability to act in a timely manner. So it's a little bit flexible, but that's what we know for now. So that's the basic layout of the site and the constraints. And so if you have any questions, feel free to ask me now, and we can have a little Q&A. Once we go out, let me just say, once we go out to the site again is federally owned, and we have sign-off sheets again that are at the front desk. Make sure you have a sign-in sheet. Everyone needs to sign it, and we need to give it back to the federal government after this meeting so that they feel comfortable with everybody. Gives everybody one-day access onto the site. There's a lot of divots and debris around the site. So when you go out to the site, you have to be very careful. We put up caution tape and try to protect the area as possible. Please respect the caution tape. You are not allowed to go into any of the buildings. It's not safe to do so. So you can examine Building B in the timber shed and look around the rest of the site, but you cannot go into any other buildings. It's for your safety. And just watch your step. And when we go out there, there's no real discussion. If you have any questions, we will take them, but there's no more program out there. So it's just your chance to go look around the site and look at the condition of the site and sort of figure out the site planning on it.
You can take
Yes.
photos?
You can take photos, yes.
Square footage on Building B?
Building B is about 7,000 square feet.
The utilities to the site, they're existing on Navy or in Flushing, do you know where exactly?
I think that they are on Flushing, but I think they are on Flushing. But Carrie, do you know the existing utilities? Do you know if they're on Flushing or Navy? Both. Yes.
How long is the tour?
The tour. Basically, what we're going to do is get into buses. We have our Navy Yard buses. We will take people over there. People can look around the site as they wish. We're obviously not going to spend all day there, but feel free to look around, and it's basically as long as you like, within reason. Yeah, and again, do not go beyond the tape. It's really for your safety. There's a lot of bricks everywhere. There's debris. You'll see. It's hard to understand what the site looks like from sitting in this room. When you go out there, you'll see what I mean. So please respect the caution tape. It's for your own safety and protection.
Buses will be shutting people back.
You can't walk.
Yes.
Will you be circulating the sign-in sheet?
I don't see why not. We probably can, yes.
And then are there any other public approvals aside from the special permit?
Are there any other rules?
Public approvals?
I don't believe, Design Commission. Since it's city-owned land, everything must go through the Design Commission, and I am the Navy Yard's liaison for Design Commission, so we would have to go through it together. Yes.
How did you identify the size of the supermarket that was part?
Well, we had originally done some preliminary layouts on the site, which actually would accommodate a 65,000 square foot supermarket. That was before the federal government specified the 2 buildings that they wanted saved. So we actually picked 40,000 because we want a regional destination supermarket. So we want a large format supermarket. But we understand, we didn't do any further studies, site planning studies, but we didn't want to demand a supermarket that just could not physically be located on the site. So we're saying 40,000 minimum.
One was you answered from a zoning perspective, from a market standpoint.
From a market standpoint, we looked at it going back a number of years with CBRE, did a study for us. We've done our own research of successful large format supermarkets that would serve multiple communities.
Studies available?
I think if you did your own research of large format supermarkets that serve multiple communities in our destination markets, you'd find that 40 to 60,000 square feet is fairly typical.
For instance, I think the Fairway in Red Hook is 53,000 square feet. All those regional supermarkets tend to be in that range. That's what we have found. Yes.
Is this a long-term ground lease? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Any parameters on the ground lease?
You can include in your bid whatever proposal you want in terms of it, but it will be a long-term ground lease. That's what we
And the
anticipate.
ground lease will be from who?
The ground lease would be between the Brooklyn Navy Yard Development Corporation and the selected developer.
Okay, so the city's going to give you the fee, or the federal government gives you
Be within should we go forward with the acquisition of the site, which we expect to do, the city will acquire it and then put it in our master lease. So it will be part of our master lease.
Would you share the research that CBRE did for you?
Sure.
Yeah, I believe it's from 2005, but it should still be.
How much you need the value? How much you value?
That's a competitive process, so you're welcome to bid what you think is a competitive proposal.
Is there any environmental testing on the site?
We have not done our own because it's not our site yet. That's the federal government, as I said, they've begun their federal environmental assessment. They've only just begun that, and I don't think they've done the environmental studies yet. They've just done the basic groundwork in terms of setting up the EA, but that will be completed in the next few months. So we have not done it just because it's not our site. We don't have, even though it's within the perimeter of the Navy Yard, we don't have access to the site.
Would those tests be available? Studies?
I think because they're federal documents, they'll be made available to public.
Do you have any idea when they'll be completed?
We have asked them, and they actually do not. They just told us that they actually do not know yet. So, but I would assume within the next few months. I'm hoping. Yes.
Of the organized community groups surrounding the site, what is their highest priority?
Well, for 25 years, we've been working with the community on putting a major supermarket on this site. So we have very, very strong support from all the elected officials, all the tenant associations, the community groups. Obviously, as you know, if you've read the paper, there's been some controversy around the buildings and how many will stay, how many will go, and that's what the federal government has been determining through the Section 106 process.
Is there any anticipated or suggested use for the historic buildings?
It's up to you.
The restoration of historic buildings, you have to restore them at a certain price. Does anybody have an estimate of what that's going to cost or not?
Well, the federal government completed a study as part of their alternatives analysis to figure out, as part of the Section 106 process. So they do have some, and actually, we call it the Beardsley Report. It was done by their consultants. And that is available, and I'm sure I can make that available to you. And they have some cost estimates. I will say that we believe that they are low, but you will see when you go out to the site and be able to make your own estimate. But I can make that available. Again, when I get everybody's email list, I will be able to link people up to any of the files that we have. I can link you to the federal government's files and anything that we may have in our archive that specifically references Building B and the timber shed and anything that's relevant to the site. So I will make that available. Yes?
You said that the federal government has determined that 2 buildings will stay. Will they remove the remaining buildings before the site becomes a city-owned property?
That will be determined as we go through the bidding process and receive bids, select a developer, as we learn more from the federal government on how they want to proceed on closing out the Section 106. So we anticipate that, I think that the answer is we don't know yet. That's the answer.
Beyond the 2 buildings that are any hazardous materials found in the 2 buildings to remain, will any remediation be required of the development team?
For the 2 buildings, yeah.
Well, for the 2 buildings or for the rest of the site?
For the rest of the site.
Again, I'm not sure that we know what the condition of the site's going to be when we get it. If the site's cleared already, then it's not going to be an issue. As part of the development, there will be a salvage. As part of the demolition of the site, there will be a salvage plan in place. But I think, again, these are details, and I'm sorry we don't have any more specifics on this, but they're details that we're still working out with the federal government, and it'll be all included in a memorandum of agreement that we enter into with the federal government. And so it will all be spelled out, but it just isn't now.
How does the community intend to access the site? By walking, or is there concern about parking? Are there any easements on Flushing or Navy Road? How do you access the site?
Well, we assume that people access the retail portion of the site either by walking, by driving. Again, we want this supermarket to be a regional destination, so we believe that there must be sufficient parking for the supermarket. And obviously there will be a lot of people that walk, but there will also be a lot of people that drive. Just for instance, I mean, there are a lot of people that drive into the Navy Yard that work here every day. So, you know, there will be a lot of people with vehicles. So I would say that you would need to provide enough parking that you think will service your retail.
Does the city have any plans for public transportation, like busing routes? Or?
Well, the bus drops you off right there. There are buses. There are 2 or 3 buses that actually run right along Flushing Street. So, and I would say that, you know, obviously this is going to go in for a ULURP and it's going to require site plan review. So the parking will need to meet the zoning, unless you can get it passed under ULURP with something less than that.
There's an increasing number of people who come to the Navy Yard every day on their bicycles. We're putting in bike lanes throughout the yard. The Brooklyn Greenaway, Waterfront Greenaway around the perimeter will have both bike and pedestrian access. So we value very highly being able to access the site easily by foot and by bike as well as by car.
If it was feasible, could you move those buildings on site?
We don't think so, but if you want to go and suggest that, and maybe it's possible, I don't know. I don't think that you can. Particularly the timber shed, I would certainly not be able, you wouldn't be able to move that. The building B, I don't think so, but you should take a look at it and see if that would be possible.
Can you discuss ingress and egress for both walkers and drivers, given your security fence requirements? You may have had a slide on it, I wasn't 100% clear.
So let me go back to the... Actually, let's go back to here. All right, so basically, this is the site here, and the perimeter fence would essentially, just for making it easy, would go behind here, so that the rest of the Navy Yard is within the perimeter fence. Now, obviously, if you put a building here, a building can serve as a fence. We just need some sort of barrier so that people cannot just walk in. Everyone needs to. This is the Sand Street entrance. This is the Cumberland Street gate. Everybody has to be vetted into the industrial park. Now, obviously, all the retail can be right off of Flushing or Navy. It doesn't matter. But any of the buildings that are going to have access into the Navy Yard have to have a security measure in place. So whether it's a new fence, whether it's the building, it's up to you. It just depends on where you're going to locate the buildings, right? So, but everything on this side has to be secure.
The Brooklyn Greenway is on the site or it's off the site?
It is partially. I believe that what we have committed to is 7 feet off of Flushing and 5 feet off of Navy. It's a combination. What we have provided for the Brooklyn Greenway is that all along our perimeter, where we can provide them setbacks, we have. And so obviously this site gives an opportunity, since these buildings are set back already, and if the rest of the site is cleared, it gives them more of an opportunity. Obviously we have some parts around the yard where we just cannot give the Greenway. But the Greenway is a dedicated pedestrian and bike lane. So they've been working with DOT, and they're also working with the property owners around. So it's a combination, So
it's part on the site and part off the site?
Yeah. So it would we said we could probably give 7 feet here. So we've just gone ahead and said, it looks like, because there's these beautiful trees along Flushing, and we thought that'd be a great way to incorporate it into the Greenway. So essentially, when you go out there, you'll see essentially our setback would be kind of right behind this first row of trees.
And that's 7 feet of the property or 7 feet off the curb line?
Off the property.
Your portion of the donation is 7 feet?
Yes.
Will you consider proposals that require the city to only acquire a portion of the designated site?
No, the full site.
Do you anticipate that the closing between the city and the federal government will be contingent upon an agreement, a lease, a ground lease, or a development agreement with the selected developer?
Well, part of the reason that we're having this competitive process is we want to find a development partner who we can go forward with. That agreement will help expedite the conclusion of the acquisition of the site by the city and the incorporation into our master lease.
So from a legal point of view, not contingent, but from a practical point of view, yes.
Probably safe to say.
Anyone else? Yes.
Is there any parking available within the Navy Yard to support industrial use on this site?
Yes, we will. There will be some shared parking opportunities inside for the industrial use. So, yes. But again, as you can see here, there's buildings directly surrounding this entire site, and so there's no significant amount of parking that's going to be available for the site. It all should be accommodated on. Most of it should be accommodated on the site, except for the industrial. In the back.
Yeah. This is an M-zone site, correct?
M12, yes.
Okay. For supermarket usage with the fresh program, the new limitation is 30,000 square.
It is my understanding that this site does not fall within that program. We're in discussions now trying to figure out how we could get that into it, but from what I understand, this site that program is not applicable to this site.
So that means there is a lower limitation or higher limitation? Lower. Because M1 zone...
Lower.
M-zone
Over 10,000 square feet. You need ULURP.
It's got to be ULURP then. So fresh is not included into this at all?
Unfortunately, no.
So it's a separate process for supermarkets to come into the site.
Will the existing buildings that are going to stay, do they have a parking requirement?
I would assume they do, except that the zoning usually excludes you from buildings that are built pre-1961. So that's something I'd have to look into, actually. But I would assume that they should have some.
It mostly depends on what you determine as the use for the buildings.
Because there could be shared, depending on what you're using them for, there could be shared parking opportunities on the site, I would assume. They're not, I mean, the buildings are not that large, there's not going to be a huge parking requirement for them anyway, even if there is parking required.
How much parking on the Navy Yard might be available to support an industrial use on the Admiral's Row site?
It is not clear at this point, actually. It's not clear.
Look, I think as we've indicated, if a developer believes that it's viable to add a significant amount of upper floor industrial space on the site, that is core to our mission, and we're going to do everything possible to accommodate that parking within the yard.
And I will say there's a new, we are going to be constructing a new building right over here. And so there will be some parking associated with that. So there could be, again, some opportunities for shared parking for the industrial users.
Maybe are proposing to lease back the industrial space from the developer?
It is conceivable that we would consider that. I think that if that's something that's attractive to you, you should include it in your proposal. We are very confident about our ability to fill up small industrial spaces.
At what rental rate is the current market?
I think that this is a competitive process, and you ought to include a proposal in your response.
Any more questions? Yes.
Is there ferry access to the site?
There is no ferry access to the site. The closest water taxis location is just up here in Schaefer Landing. And so we do run an interior shuttle service inside the yard, and one of our stops is now the water taxi service.
And we do run a shuttle service, the two buses that if you choose to take them outside, run a consistent loop out to the subways. That's how a lot of people access this at the Navy Yard. We want to encourage the use of mass transit here as much as possible. So that is another way that workers can access the site. And you know, it is very possible that that could be expanded in the future. Obviously, we've hit on the bike lanes. I think water taxi service at some point down the road, it's very, very possible that there could be water taxi service into the yard, but we would probably have to double or triple in size in terms of the number of people working here in order to rationalize that. But New York Water Taxi is currently a tenant in the yard and servicing their boats.
Anyone else?
Does that have any history of flooding?
No. Anyone else? No. Okay. Well, let's head off the site. Remember, everybody sign your sign-off sheets that for the federal government that it gives you the right to go on the site for just today. Okay.